Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Well, everyone, it's been a while. It's good to be back. It's going to be a very, very different sort of show today because we're not going to talk about fantasy football at all. Instead, I've been joined by the very special Bob Stevens. Now, Bob is the CEO of the MPS Society, who is our charity partner for 2023. And he also is an MPS dad, and we'll get into that. But I thought this would be a really good opportunity to talk about the MPS Society and all that money that you've donated to us so far. We've passed £4,200, which is phenomenal. Thought it'd be a good opportunity to get Bob on and talk about the MPS Society, talk a little bit more about why we've picked them, what they do, and the opportunity to tell you a little bit about where your money's going to go and what impact it's going to have on the lives of people. So, Bob, thank you very much. Welcome to 5 Yard Rush. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I have to say that's got to be one of the coolest intros that I've been involved in, and it's just fabulous, fun.
Oh, well, thanks very much. Yeah, we're very lucky that we've had some amazing guests over the years. That's the voice was Scott Hansen, who hosts NFL Red Zone. So very lucky to have had him do a promo for us when he was on our show. I don't know, 3 years ago. I think we have got all the mileage out of that. I should probably change at some point, but yeah, amazing. But I really appreciate your time coming on. And like I said, we it's amazing. We were talking a little bit beforehand about you and the journey, but I think it'd be really good to, for people who are listening to this who probably don't, they've donated because they are loyal to us or want to play fantasy football, but perhaps tell them a little bit about what exactly is sort of MPS. What is this disease and why it's so rare and what it kind of does to people who suffer with it? And I know it's a collective of diseases. You're going to get into that.
So lovely, thank you. Mucopolysaccharidosis is the full terminology. Wow, that doesn't actually fit on the Scrabble board. And it sounds really complicated. So I'm just going to try and sort of make it not so complicated. We all make chemicals in our body, waste chemicals, and they're generally made up of sugars. And we have a recycling center in our body, and it's called the lysosome. And it deals with all of that and gets rid of it. In mucopolysaccharidosis, the recycling center is malfunctioning, and the lysosome is not working, and it doesn't produce the right enzymes to get rid of those chemicals. So in effect, what happens is you get a buildup within the body of these waste products, generally, as I say, sugar molecules, and they attack most organs in the body. And depending on which one of the MPS diseases, it has different effects. But most of them will affect either the brain, the skeleton, the heart, most of the organs in the body to a varying degree. And for all of our diseases, there are no cures.
It's really sad to hear. So really what it is just trying to find research to either find a cure or to find better ways to potentially manage this disease to make it as comfortable and as livable of a condition as can be.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have some of the diseases that have modifying treatments, so they will enable you to live a longer life and probably a better quality of life. And I indeed myself am very lucky because both my sons who have one of the MPS diseases called Hunter's, they are both on what effectively is an enzyme replacement therapy. And that's a bit like a blood transfusion that they have every week, 52 weeks of the year, and it slows the progression down of the disease. However, that is only for a few of our diseases. And as I say, many of them don't have any curative options or any treatment options, and so it's all about the quality of care that they may get from their clinicians and the family and support network around them. So although there may not be treatments, there is hope and there is a really good community, even though it's small, because these are the rarest of diseases, and the people that live with these diseases or that are affected by them, they are the most marginalized in society. And, I affectionately refer to them as gobsmackingly rare diseases. And that's because if you take mine, MPS2, for instance, there are 50 to 60 patients in the UK. And some of our diseases, there are far less. There are a few that have a few more. But you're talking of these diseases where there are many, many interventions. And it is a very difficult journey for not only the patient, but for their families as well.
So across the UK and across all the diseases, and I appreciate there's probably not a hard number here, but what approximately, how many people would you say suffer from an MPS disease in some form in the UK, roughly?
So we're supporting across all of our diseases, we're supporting just short of 2,000 families. But if we'd say if it was purely the MPSs, approximately half of that, so around 1,000 families that have to live with the daily trials and tribulations of
Wow.
an MPS disease. So considering the population, and I'm not sure what we are in the UK, but it's 70 odd
Close to
million or
70
whatever, is
million.
it?
Yeah. Yeah, close
And
to
we're
70 million.
talking of 1,000 plus families, give or take.
Wow. It's just not so I mean, when you say like gobsmackingly rare, you're not even kidding. That's uber rare. That's,
Absolutely.
literally, unfortunately, if you end up with this is something that you really haven't won the lottery that you kind of hope that you would. In terms of those numbers, have you seen growth in terms of your time with MPS? This is something that is becoming, I don't say more common because it's not, but in terms of, has there been growth in those numbers over the last sort of 5-10 years, or has it been like a pretty steady sort of diagnosis rate? And is there more awareness as a result of this now, where people are potentially getting diagnosed where they might not have been before, because there is more awareness, because there are more families now that are getting this?
So I think there is a small amount of increased awareness. For instance, my own journey when my sons were diagnosed, the local paediatrician who saw them had seen one other case in the whole of his life, and he'd been practicing pediatrics for 25 years. And it was just something in the back of his mind that made him think about it. So it's not a very well diagnosed disease. We haven't seen much a movement in the average age of when you get diagnosed, and it's generally around 4 years old, depending on the severity. So there's a long time before parents get an answer, and that's a long time of worry. One of the things that holds us back in this country is that we have a very conservative newborn screening program, which doesn't allow our diseases to be screened for. Whereas in many other countries, some of our diseases are now being screened for. And the simple equation is the earlier you find out about this disease, the more treatment options there are, which generally leads to a better quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a shame that doesn't happen. I take it that one of the objectives of the society is to try and get that changed and to get that potentially back on the screening list. Is there things that you can do, or is there things that our listeners can do that can potentially help with that? Is there a campaign or something that can be
Absolutely.
signed or something?
Absolutely. So I would encourage your listeners to contact us here at the MPS Society. So www.mpssociety.org.uk. And as one of my roles, I am the acting chair of the Newborn Screening Collaborative. And we are pressurizing governments and the NHS to take seriously the plight of our families, and to say, with a minimal cost of doing the newborn screening, you will save a lifetime of suffering. You will actually cost the NHS far less money just by a bit of money up front for the screening test itself. And it's not difficult to do, but we have such an archaic system that it can take 10, 15 years or so to get a disease to be screened in the UK.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? When you hear that, and I've had my trials and tribulations with the NHS this year, so I can understand how archaic it is and how difficult it is for that change. So hopefully people can go onto the site, and I'll link it in the show notes, and go on and yeah, let's try and get some change, positive change going that way. Moving on to the work that you do, what sort of support do you give to families and those that are suffering with the disease? What is the sort of support network that you provide, and how do you provide that, and more importantly, how does it work from a day-to-day basis from when someone gets in touch and that journey?
So we've been in existence for over 40 years now, and our founder, Christine Lavery, was a visionary. And in those days, it started round a kitchen table, and it was just about having coffee mornings, raising small amounts of funds, and eventually having the first conference. And now we look 40 years on, we have raised and provided several £1 million for dedicated research into our diseases. We operate not only in the UK, but we influence globally. We are the only national organisation that has an international remit. And we provide support in many different forms. So, one of the things our families just want is to be with another family that lives this journey. So, we will organise events so they can come together and just be who they are. And that's a real soft skill. Some of the other things that we do, so we have counselling, so that we not only try and keep the family unit together, because if you can imagine living a life where you have an affected family member with a life limiting and ultimately terminal disease, there's a huge amount of pressure. So we work very hard with the families, whether that be mum and dad or siblings or extended family. We work very hard to support them, and so that they can live the lives that they want. And that takes a lot of soft skills. On top of that, we will challenge the system, so the healthcare system, and to get the treatments that are being developed, and some of the treatments that are being developed, the science behind it, it's science fiction has become science fact. The development of the medicines and the therapies are so cutting edge. It's at the very, very limit of what humans can do. It's equivalent to putting somebody on Mars. The technology always just amazes me. So one of our challenges is to get those treatments to the patients. And unfortunately, and something that I've really struggled with as a father, there is an equation that tells me how much my son is worth in pounds, and it is
Mm.
called a qualia, quality adjusted life year, and it's designed by health economists so they can work out how much money they want to spend on an individual. And unfortunately, because they're ultra rare people and it takes an awful lot of money to develop these treatments, the treatments are expensive, and in some cases the equation says, oh, you're not worth spending that money on. And to me, that's something that I will never accept, that you should suffer just because you happen to be born with a rare disease.
Mm. That's tragic. I can't believe that in those circumstances. I can understand where there is very limited resource and it's evaluating which one potentially gives the best quality of life increase. So if you've got someone who is perhaps nearer the end of their life and condition versus someone who is potentially a bit nearer in the journey, and you've got to make a tough decision, only one person get it. Those sort of decisions, as horrible as they are, at least there's some rationale and thought behind it. But when it's purely financial, I find that really borderline distasteful, that that it's such a qualitative hard cut, especially when there isn't a limit in terms of the amount of care that you can give people. It's just decided that they don't think it's worthwhile, which is just how would they feel if they were on the other end of that?
Absolutely, and I think that whatever your viewers would need to understand is that the treatments that are being developed and the one or two treatments that are actually available now are transformative. And I can say that as a dad of two sons receiving the treatment. My sons are now 23 and 21. Without the treatment, they would have passed away many years ago. And now they are living a reasonable quality of life. In fact, my youngest is able to drive. And that is something that would never have happened. And this is coming for many of our diseases. But the challenge is that because they are small in number, the voice is not as loud as maybe it is with some of the other more mainstream diseases. And that's where, again, we as the MPS Society come in, is to say we give a voice to our patients and their families, and we will challenge, whether that be NICE, whether that be the NHS, or whether that will be our government, because that is what we do. We fight for our families.
Yeah, and you have to, right? Because no one else is going to, and it's great to hear, the work that you do, and that people, even if there is only 1,000, 2,000 people in the UK that suffer from this spectrum of diseases, that they have somewhere and people who can advocate for them. Because I find, I've been diagnosed with an incurable, well, semi-incurable disease called ulcerative colitis, which is far more common. Like one 500 people in the UK have some form of Crohn's or ulcerative colitis, and I'm lucky enough that it's a disease that is more well known, that there is more information, people advocate for you, but there is an organisation that will also advocate for you, so you're never alone. And I think what I love about what you do is the fact that if there's only, you're talking 1,000 people spread across the UK, there could be people who don't have anyone within 50 miles of them, very realistically and probably reality, that has anyone within 50 miles of them that's living in their shoes with the same condition or similar condition. And so having a voice and a place where people can go, not just get information, but as you say, connect them to other people, even if they're in the other end of the country, with technology, it's still possible to connect and do events, as you say, and do all those sorts of things. I think it's not just admirable, but it's remarkable that you're able to connect these people and give them the opportunities to meet people, but just to advocate them, inform them, and push that agenda for them, so that if they get told no, you're not going to say, well, that's it, we just give up. It's like, no, we keep fighting. We're going to make sure that we keep going until the very end. And I think that's a remarkable thing.
Absolutely. And, we have a team, our advocacy team. And one of the things we offer everybody diagnosed in the UK is a personal visit from our advocacy team. And then we start to build the relationship and help our families pick themselves back up from a diagnosis that can be devastating. And we will walk alongside them on their journey and help them rebuild their lives. And it's an extreme privilege to be able to do that. And one thing I would like to say is all of the people that work in rare, as we call it, these sort of diseases, they're such dedicated people. And that's not just the people that work in the charitable organisations or patient organisations. Our clinicians are some of the best in the world. Our NHS, who gets a lot of hard press sometimes, and in some of it is justified, but they are so dedicated, and what they have achieved for our families in the way that they care for them, it's just amazing to watch that dedication.
Yeah, and without them, nothing would happen, right? And
You're absolutely right.
Behind every organisation, you've got to have great people, and you've got to have people that want to make a difference and are willing to push through the hard times to do it. So fantastic to hear. In terms of the organisation itself, so we talked a little bit about what you do and sort of how you do it, but you talked about sort of some of the events you do. But in terms of how does the money that you raise get spent? What does it kind of go towards, and how does this money sort of make the difference to not just the families, but also to the research and the awareness of this disease, so that potentially we move to either better treatments, a cure, or more importantly, the ability to test more so that more people can potentially get diagnosed early and receive treatment before it gets to a point where treatment won't make a difference.
So we recognise at the MPS Society that every donation is vital. And especially when you're talking of small organizations, we don't have a budget for advertising on television or anything like this. So it's very much about building the networks and doing the things such as we're doing here, connecting with real people all of the time. And so that hard-earned money, we look very carefully at how we're going to spend it. And I think one of the things that really uh, put things in the spotlight was actually the pandemic, because we were all suddenly faced at being at home. And
Mm.
as several of our families said, the general population is now living the life of isolation that we've always lived. And it
Yeah.
made people realize about mental health much more. And so what we try and do is we look at what do our families want, and we're constantly talking to them and saying, okay, what is it that you need? And one of the big provisions over the last couple of years has been that mental health support in many different aspects of their lives, and enabling them to get back some of that resilience that was lost through the devastation they went through, like many of us, in COVID.
Mm.
But unlike many of us, they are still suffering with some of that, and their confidence is has been knocked, and it's a gradual process. And for instance, the £200 to £300 will help support a whole family for a year
Oh
with
wow.
our
Okay.
services. So, we really believe that the mixture of the technology, which is doing the stuff how we're doing here using the internet, is great. But sometimes you just need to be with the families to, in effect, hold their hands, listen to what they want to say, and you need to put people boots on the ground. And so we're a very people driven organization. Yes, there's a place for technology, but really you need to be part of their extended family. So this money is so vital, and because of the work that we have been able to do, because of the fundraising that has been done over the years, the MPS Society was able to develop a new way with our partners in the NHS and with pharma companies of getting treatments to our families whilst they were still being evaluated. And it's called a managed access agreement. Because you don't have a lot of information about our diseases, naturally, because there aren't a lot of people, we needed to find a way that we could evaluate how well the treatment was working whilst they were getting it after it been through all the safety trials and what have you. So we co-designed what is now the blueprint for rare diseases in the UK, a way of doing that. And you may have seen in the news a couple of years ago that we have now what's known as the Innovative Medicines Fund, and I think Boris Johnson at the time was talking an awful lot about it, where the government put 300 million into the Innovative Medicines Fund. That is primarily going to use a managed access agreement for each treatment. So we're very proud as the MPS Society to be an architect of something that's going to benefit a lot of people. And that has enabled some of our patients to get access to treatment earlier. And it has also allowed now one of our treatments to be mainstream as a result of the managed access agreements and are fully funded by the NHS. And there are other treatments that are in development. And all of this is as a direct result of every pound that our supporters have raised. And we're eternally grateful for that.
It's amazing to hear, and it's great to hear the impact that it has, and it's changing the way things work in the system. It's changing lives. It's changing everything possible. So the question I would ask you is, if we hit our target of £5,000, which we're hoping to do, what would that money do to the MPS in terms of what that would allow you to do to support further? What are some of the things that money would go towards to help families and research and access?
Well, if we look at it in terms, let's just put it into one simple term: £5,000, 25 families supported for a whole year with the range of services that we do, and
Wow.
that personal visits. We support our families getting access to some of the statutory funding that is very difficult to get hold of. So the PIPs, personal independence payments, and local authority funding. We will go and fight their cause, attend tribunals, support them through the process, help them fill out the forms, all of this stuff which they need to live daily. So 25 families will get a whole year's support. And I think I'm really proud of it. I think that's really good value for money.
Yeah, I think that's unbelievable. The fact that this money that we raise can impact 25 families. That's over 100 people effectively. If you look at an average of 4, and then you're not even talking about the wider families and the extended family and the quality of life that can bring people. I'm incredibly proud that we will be able to do that, and I think all our listeners should be incredibly proud that they've played a big part in that. And if you haven't donated yet, in the notes will be just the link. Please do add that. We are very, very close to that number, another £800 or so. At the time of recording, I expect that number to be less by the time this goes out. But yeah, definitely do. Even if you've already donated and would like to donate again and be inspired by this, please do, because as you're hearing from Bob now, every penny of this money that we raise, it's not going to get lost. It's not going to just sit in a bank account and sit around. This money is going to be used to have a positive impact on lives. So really encourage everybody to help us hit that goal as quickly as possible, get the money in Bob's hands as quickly as possible so that he can make, and the MPS Society can make all the difference. Bob, before we let you go, we've got a couple minutes left. What are some of the things that our listeners can do to interact with the organisation, and what are some of the things that you've got coming up that you'd like to promote, that people can get more information, or if they've listened to this and think actually I'd like to do more or find out more, where they can go to get those resources?
So unfortunately, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. and so all of the online technical stuff that it comes naturally to you doesn't come very naturally to me. So I always quote, go onto the website, because it's the one thing that I understand. And as I say, www.mpssociety.org.uk, and that will give you a whole range of things that you can become involved in. And it's not always about raising money. It's about having a good conversation. And if I can reach out to your members here and your community, and if they remember this podcast and they say to one of their friends, oh, do you remember listening to Bob Stevens having a podcast? That is so important, because it raises awareness. And what we want is, as much as donations, we want to increase our voice. We don't want sympathy, we want understanding. That's all we want. And we want the chance for our families to live the lives they deserve. And that, I don't think, is too much to ask.
No, I completely agree. And I think that's great. And yeah, we absolutely share the link in here. There is a lot of information on here about events that you've got coming up, as well as also there's some really useful videos in terms of the work that you do. And there's also an opportunity to, if you want to fundraise for them, you can. There's challenges as well on there, and get more information on the organisation. So do check out the website. The link is in the website in the show notes and out on here. So do check that out along with the fundraising page. So please do donate as much as you can, or as little as you can, or whatever you can afford. It's really appreciated. Again, we did this. This is such a rare thing to take away from regular programming and think about. I really wanted the opportunity for Bob to come on and talk about the impact that this is going to have, because so many great people in the space are doing great things and raising lots of money, and lots of people have donated lots of hard-earned money, but perhaps you don't quite hear where that's going to go, why they've picked it, and what difference your money is going to make. And we all see those charity programs like Soccer Aid and Children in Need, and they do all the promotional stuff, and you can see where the money goes and the impact it has. And I thought it'd be really good to do something like this. So Bob, I really appreciate your time coming on and talking about this. Is there anything else you'd like to say to people before we sign off here?
I'd just like to say thank you. It's been a great privilege, and I speak to people here, although on the screen it says you're Group CEO. I'm no more than a dad, and I'm trying to fight for my children and other families like them. And I don't have a job. I have a way of life, and it's just an honor and a privilege to get up every day and try and make a difference.
Well, we appreciate it. Appreciate everything that you do. I think it's not just noble, but admirable. And I think it's amazing that you can do that and make a huge difference to people's lives, and appreciate everything that you do. And we hope that this money that we raise for you has a significant difference. We know it's going to make that difference, but we hope we can smash that £5,000, get you as every single penny that we can to really continue that mission and continue all the good work that you do. So appreciate you telling your story and appreciate all of your time.
Fabulous, and thank you very much.
Well, no, you're very welcome. And follow the information that we put in the links. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Please do donate as much as you can. And don't forget, we will be back next week. It's been a bit of a hiatus with my health, but looking forward to coming back full time and talking more about fantasy football as we kick off into the season. Now we're in charity season, and then moving into the proper season. So lots of strategy. Stocks and I will be back next week. But until then, as always, don't forget, keep rushing.